edition of the Betting Edge. As you can see, I am not the Prez. I am Rob Vino, filling in for the Prez, who's on vacation. Nice holiday, well-deserved holiday for the Prez. We're going to fill in for him the entire week, and we're going to start off the Monday with co-owner of WagerTalk, Marco D'Angelo. We're going to discuss today the NFL look-ahead. We're going to go through opening lines. We'll talk about the moves. Marco will obviously let you guys know where he thinks the lines are moving, give you any opinion that he might have on the game early. And we will also discuss tiebreaker scenarios, which are in full force in both conferences right now. Some I could not even get to the bottom of. So if you guys want to comment on things that we might miss, certainly feel free to comment. And especially if you want to tell us how much you like what we're doing here. We like positive feedback around here. So anyway, once again, Rob Vino from Sports Minimum, and now we're going to bring in our guest today, Marco D'Angelo. Marco off a 6-0 yesterday. Fantastic day. Marco, how are you this afternoon?
Well, very good, Rob. Anytime we can get one of those 6-0 days, they don't come along that often, but they sure are fun. And for me, as I was talking with you right before we went on air, bittersweet day for me. We had Buffalo in a ton of teasers yesterday. Loved Buffalo in the teaser because I just didn't see either team getting separation in that Sunday night football game. But unfortunately for me, on the personal level, my Pittsburgh Steelers took a blow last night for their playoff hopes. They do still control their own destiny, but they got to win out, and they got the Jets next week coming up on Sunday. But unfortunately, they got that Baltimore Raven matchup at the end of the season that, these two teams don't like each other. And even though the Ravens, I'm hoping it doesn't mean anything, and they rest Lamar Jackson in that game. But as much as they don't like us, I'm sure they'll play the starters anyways.
Yeah, coaches are different that way, Marco. Some don't like to rest knowing that they have a bye week the following week, and they might play them as a preseason game, maybe a quarter, a half, something like that. But any Steeler fan out there, and I've got a great friend of mine who's a Steeler fan as well, rooting for the No Lamar Jackson show on the final week of the season. But let's get to it here. We'll start with the Saturday card. For those of you who don't know yet, Thursday night football is finished, and Saturday NFL takes over. We have a triple header this coming Saturday. The rotation, we're going to go in rotation order, not necessarily time order for those of you following along with us here, because the first game up in the rotation happens to be the Saturday night game, the LA Rams against the San Francisco 49ers. In this particular contest, San Francisco opened a 6-point favorite with a total of 46.5. Since been bet up half a point to 6.5. Total down a little bit to 46. San Francisco, obviously, those who were involved yesterday, like myself in that Atlanta-San Francisco game, know the heartbreak of the 49ers as they came close to winning that game yesterday, but ended up losing by a bigger margin due to 2 touchdowns in 2 seconds by the Atlanta Falcons. Not sure I've seen a game close that way before. Real quick before I get to Marco, just going to hit on the tiebreaker scenario here for San Francisco. It's a weird, it could be a weird ascension, or definitely was a weird descension yesterday down in the conference standings. They now sit as the number 5 seed. Their last game is at Seattle. That game could change everything for them. It could possibly be for division title and number 1 seed overall. So a lot to play for here for the 49ers. Rams now sit in 7th place in the NFC after that shellacking against Dallas yesterday. LA Rams 2 games behind now, so they're clinging to their playoff lives, need a lot of help. But Marco, the line is currently 6.5 and 46. Opinions on where this game's going and the way we might be able to play this early in the week?
Yeah, looking at this one, Rob, for San Francisco yesterday, Atlanta, I wasn't involved in the game, but it was a sandwich spot for San Francisco. They were coming off that trio of games where they played Green Bay on Sunday night, then they had that big game against Baltimore, and then an even bigger game against New Orleans 2 weeks ago. And then they just come up flat against Atlanta. Although they were winning the game the whole way until the end, they were never covering the game. Atlanta was getting the cover with the 10 points there. So it was a spot where you could say, hey, San Francisco, natural, letdown, have that lackluster performance yesterday. They were looking ahead to the Rams in Seattle that's left on the schedule. So I think you're going to see the real 49er team this week. The look-ahead line on this was 6.5. Then you just said it opened up 6, now back to 6.5. That's where this number's probably going to be. I don't see it getting to the 7. I would be surprised. I think that this will be one of those ones where it gets to 7. You're going to get the guys that want the Rams will jump in, take the Rams at 7, just bring it right back down to 6.5. I think it'll ping pong back and forth that way, but I don't see it actually closing at 7. This is a good number where it's at. And we saw what the 49ers did the first time they played this team in L.A. And if you remember when they played that first one, they were coming off that big Monday night game against Cleveland, which at the time was a big game because there was still all that hype around the Browns, and they definitely haven't lived up to that. And we saw the Rams yesterday go back to the underachieving Rams that they've been most of the season. Everybody started getting excited after they had a couple wins. But again, beating an Arizona team is nothing to get excited about. And then they just caught Seattle in a perfect spot as Seattle had a trio of big games in a row. So not sold on the Rams, and that's why we were on the Cowboys yesterday. This is one of those ones that I may be looking at the 49ers on a teaser this week. Get them down to, on a 6-point teaser, a -0.5, just have to win the game. That would be my early lean in this one.
And great point right there, Marco, because I tell you, on a 3-game Saturday, public money definitely going to come in heavy with only 3 games being played. There are some bowl games to be mixed in as well, but as far as NFL is concerned, you could see a lot of 3-team teasers made out of these 3 games. You could see a lot of 3-team parlays made out of these games. If you like San Francisco, as Marco says, if it touches 7, you probably want to get to the window right now, lay the 6.5. You don't want to lay 7 in any instance when you can get a 6.5. Next up, the biggest game of the day with such importance as far as the AFC East is concerned, as far as the AFC conference seeding is concerned. Buffalo at New England, they'll take their second shot at this apple, Marco. They almost got there the first time. New England won that game. This one opened up New England 6.5, 38.5. We see that pretty much the same across the board here, but there are a couple 6s out there. We've seen some Buffalo money in some locales. So if you're on the Bills and you like the Bills, maybe the advice is to get there quickly. Marco will let you know which way he thinks the line's going. As of right now, where playoff seedings are concerned, Buffalo sits at number 4. If they win out, they win the AFC East because they'll have a better conference record than New England. So the head-to-head would be a push, but the better conference record would go to the Bills. Their final game, Marco, is against the Jets. So Buffalo needs to get through this one and then get to the Jets. For New England, they're the number 2 seed. If they win out, they are the number 2 seed. There's plenty of tiebreaker scenarios if they should lose here. Their last game is home against Miami. They should win that game. So a lot of importance here, Marco, where division title is concerned. It's on the line. Go ahead and fill us in with your read on this particular AFC East matchup.
Yeah, well, the look-ahead line was a full 7 points in this game, and not surprising based on the performances yesterday. Yes, New England won yesterday, and they won rather easily, but again, it was against the Cincinnati Bengals, so how much stock are you going to put in that? Plus, let's not forget, they had the film on the play calling from the Bengals, which was the big story from last week. But the money's going to come to the Buffalo side, and why not? This is a team, this defense is absolutely nasty. You saw last night 2 great defenses play one another, 2 very mediocre offenses playing one another, and that's how you get a 17-10 game. But the concern here with Buffalo is, are they going to be able to generate enough points? Their defense has been holding them in there, but New England's no slouch on defense either. And my concern is when you get 5 turnovers, as the Pittsburgh Steelers gifted them yesterday, and you're +3 in the turnover margin, you generally should win by more than 7 points. So that's a little bit of a concern. The other concern with Buffalo is the fact, how many times can they put the pedal to the metal? They have now had 3 monster games in a row. The Thursday Thanksgiving Day game, which was basically their coming out party to a national audience because a lot of people had not seen Buffalo play yet this year. And they handled the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day on a standalone game. Big game for them. Then they come right back the next week, Rob, and have to play Baltimore, and Baltimore was, the darling with Lamar Jackson running wild over everybody, and they took them right to the limit, lose that game late, and had a chance to tie it late and couldn't get it punched in. And then, of course, last night, maybe the biggest game of all for them because they were in the 5th spot for the playoffs and had the number 1 seed, obviously, as the wild card. But if the Steelers would have won that game and playing at home, they would have flip-flopped positions, and Steelers would have been in the 5th spot. So now you're asking this team for the 4th week in a row to go, pedal to the metal again. In New England, how often do you want to go against Bill Belichick in a big game? And when was the last time that we're talking late December and the New England Patriots were playing a meaningful game, not for home field, but for actually winning the division? They're always in the mix for the home field, it seems like year in, year out, but it's been a long, long time since a game was this meaningful for the division this late in the year, and we'll see how they handle it. But that record of Belichick and Brady at home in under a touchdown, I don't know that I'm going to go against them. And as I said in the other game, this is another strong candidate on a 6-point teaser where you could take, play a 2-team teaser and round robin some of these. New England down to just win the game is going to be pretty inviting with the history of Belichick and Brady at Foxborough.
Yes, certainly coupled with the previous game we talked about, Marco, San Francisco, 2 home teams, 2 extremely talented teams where you can get it near pick'em in not must win, but very serious win situations. So I want to just make note that Marco did correctly point out that Buffalo is the 5 seed. I jumped the gun in calling them the 4 seed looking ahead to our next game. They're currently at 5 right now, but could make their way right up the standings. A lot of these games with major implications this week, as well as this one that we'll talk about. It closes out the Saturday card. It is the early start, the 1 o'clock Eastern game, the 10 a.m. Pacific time game. The number 4 seed, Houston Texans, off of a huge win yesterday. Significance abounded in that win over the Tennessee Titans on the road. That they sit at number 4. Their last game of the season will again come against Tennessee. The schedule maker probably patting himself on the back for making that work out. Houston, Tennessee for the division title twice in the final 3 weeks. But a win in this game against Tampa Bay, guys, for the playoff scenario, we'll paint the picture for you here. A win in this game clinches the AFC South for the Houston Texans. If they win out, they could get as high as number 2 by virtue of the fact that they've defeated Kansas City and New England head-to-head this season. Impressive wins by the Texans. New England would have to lose out in that scenario for Houston to take over the 2. KC would have to lose 1 time in their last 2 games. So for the Houston Texans, here against Tampa Bay, an important game for sure. This game opened with a pick'em number, total 53, but quickly pushed to the Houston side here. We see anywhere from 1 to 2.5 right before we hopped on the show here. So the line could be hopping here on Monday afternoon as we speak Eastern time. Morning time on the West Coast. But Houston, anywhere ranging from 1 to 2.5. Find the best number, as always. Total sits at 52.5 right now. Little downward push. Marco, Houston, Tampa Bay, Jameis Winston, huge game yesterday without his top 2 receivers, without Evans, and without Chris Godwin, who got hurt during that game. But still, huge performance against the Lions. How do you see this one going?
Yeah. 446 yards passing yesterday for Jameis Winston, 467 the week before. He's breaking all kinds of records on both sides of the football, with touchdown passes, yardage, and unfortunately also with interceptions. This is a guy that just loads and loads of talent, but you never know what you're going to get, who he's going to throw the football to. You just know he's going to be chucking it around. In this total, Vegas is finally trying to put the stop to people just blindly betting the overs with Tampa, Rob. This is the highest total we've seen of the season for Tampa. They've been in their last three totals have been 46.5, 46.5, and 46. But they were playing some teams that were offensively challenged, and now they're playing a team that's not offensively challenged, and we see them put up that big, I saw it as high as 53, and as you said, we had the little downward tick. But where the big move was, the look-ahead line was actually Tampa -1 at the Westgate when it came out last Tuesday, and then after the results yesterday, even though Tampa Bay won so easily, we've seen the push go to Houston, and that tells you the public is sold on this Houston team. And normally, I would be saying, man, is this a mammoth sandwich game? You got them coming off the big Tennessee game, and then they got Tennessee on deck. So this would be the game that you would want to line up to go against them. But you pointed out, and it's an important part to point out, don't have the look ahead here, because you can end this right now if you win on Saturday. You win on Saturday, as you said, then it doesn't mean that they have to go into Tennessee and win. The last thing they wanted, or excuse me, they'll have Tennessee at home. Even though they'll have them at home, you don't want to have it come down to that game. If you can end it now, do it. But I don't know about this offense, man. Tampa Bay has been unstoppable. They have scored, 38, 38, 28, 35 the last four games. The Saints held them to 17, but then before that, 30 and 34. Over is the only way to bet it, but you're not getting any value, so I'm not looking there. Again, don't want to keep beating a dead horse here, but with the line moving up on Houston and getting all the love that they're getting, you now have Tampa as an underdog when they originally were going to be a favorite in this game. So now we can add an extra 6 points and get this over all the key numbers of 3, 4, and 7. As far as the game goes itself, I don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger on either side yet, but I will be involved in Tampa Bay teasers, getting them up over the 7 points. This is one of those games that with their offense, they're always going to be in the game. The problem is their defense, how many stops they make, and how many interceptions Jameis throws. That's always the X factor here. But this should be an exciting game with both teams going up and down the field on Saturday. This might be one of those games, Rob, if you do a little in-game, if they come out like the first 5 minutes of the game, one team has a 3 and out or something, which doesn't happen too often with these two teams. But if you get 1 or 2 series where there's no points scored and there's an adjustment on the end game and they bring it down, don't be afraid not to jump on board and take an in-game over with a reduced number if they get off to a slow start, because these two teams, we saw it yesterday even in the Houston-Tennessee game, they got off to a slow start and then yet got close to the number yesterday. If Tennessee was able to get down there and get the tying field goal, we would have been looking at overtime and the game would have went over. So this is a spot where you can get some in-game value, I think, in this one on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Marco. And I could see those teaser tickets being written for public bettors right now. San Francisco, New England, and Houston. I wonder how many of those will be written this week. I'd guess that would be the number one teaser ticket for Saturday NFL action. The Houston Texans with a chance to clinch a playoff spot. And then the icing on the cake would be if they did come out and win against Tennessee week 16 and climb the standings a little bit, hoping for losses ahead of them from New England and KC. We're going to get to the Sunday schedule, but real quick, I just want to mention this is $9 Monday at WagerTalk and at sportsmemo.com. All plays released by every handicapper from both sites, just $9. Marco, a play up on this evening's Monday Night Football contest. I myself with a play up on tonight's Monday Night Football contest. You can find both of us, myself at sportsmemo.com, Marco at wagertalk.com. Go ahead, make purchases. A lot of plays up there right now. I was scanning the board before I came on, and everybody's up with a $9 play here today. So once again, take advantage of these Mondays, these special priced Mondays from WagerTalk and Sports Memo. $9 Monday. Find your way to either site, both sites, and pick up a $9 play. Let's get to the Sunday action here, Marco, with a couple here now. We'll get to meaningless games, so I won't talk too much. I'll just get right to you. The Detroit Lions at the Denver Broncos. Been a long season for the Lions, at least a long back half of the season. Denver has been the ultimate pendulum team, 1 week up, 1 week down. They opened 6.5 with a total of 37.5. Right now we're staring at 6.5 and some 38s. I think I saw a couple of 7s, and in fact, as I look, Marco, I see a couple, Pinnacle and 5 Dimes hanging 7s right now with different juice. But Detroit at Denver, not necessarily a game of importance, but do you think either side is packed it in? Do you think either side will continue to play?
Well, the Lions look like a team that's packed it in. I mean, they're on their third string quarterback here. A lot of, they started the season, with, some modest hope, and then things just went awry, then Stafford getting hurt. You got an an indoor team going to Denver in late December. That's never really a good formula. And if it is adverse weather in Denver come Sunday, Denver's got a game under their belt with bad weather conditions after playing yesterday in Kansas City. And when I look at these two teams, the difference in the teams, to me, obviously, is going to be the defense, and the Denver defense has played well this season. Granted, they gave up 23 points yesterday, but that was against the Kansas City Chiefs, who nobody can stop. They held Houston to 24 the week before in a mammoth upset, 38-24. And then they had the Chargers where they beat them 23-20. What we've had with Denver, at least this is a team that looks like they're still trying for their coach. And with Drew Lock at quarterback, this is what they're looking for the future. Okay, it's not like, they are down to their third string quarterback, but actually this was the second string quarterback. He was just hurt at the beginning of the season, and he's the one they drafted early this year. So he is supposed to be the future of the franchise. So there is an excitement around him, and I think we'll get a good effort out of Denver. That's the only way I could look. Where we had the opener, the look-ahead line was 6, and based on Detroit looking just god-awful again yesterday, as Denver looked bad as well, but people are going to dismiss it because A, it was against Kansas City, and B, it was in bad weather. And we saw the upward tick to 6.5, and I would not be surprised to see it get to 7 on Sunday with this one. The only way for me to look at it right now is to look at the Denver side. But do you really want to lay a touchdown with two teams that have nothing to play for? You're just looking at playing the team that seems to have more momentum later in the season and definitely plays better defense. And if you look at the ATS run, Denver has covered 5 of their last 7 games. So they have been competitive. But now they're in a totally different role. This will be the first time that they've been a favorite during that stretch where they covered 5 out of 7.
Moving on to the next game, 459, 460 in the rotation. Oakland and the LA Chargers. Oakland at the LA Chargers. I don't know if you can use "at" when you're referring to the LA Chargers because Charger fans just don't turn out for their games. But boy, disappointing ending to the black hole in the Oakland fan base yesterday. Derek Carr makes a first down with about a minute and a half left, charges around like he was the hero of the game, and lo and behold, they lose the game. So he looked like a fool. Got booed a little bit. The fans are a little rowdy at the end. Marco, I don't know what they have left in the tank here for this game. There are a lot of apologies going on, mainly head coach John Gruden after the ball game. Chargers get whacked 39-10 by Minnesota in a game that was steamed the Chargers' way, but Minnesota never in doubt there. Talk about a turnover fest. I think they collected 7 of them. This game opened Chargers minus 6.5 with a total of 47, a once proud AFC West rivalry. I don't know what's left here. The game has moved towards Oakland's favor, down to 5.5, 40.
Yeah, looking at this one, Rob, you froze up on me there. Can you hear me, Rob?
I can now. We have lost our connection for a minute.
All right, no problem. Sorry about that. I thought I lost you. With the chart, both these teams, I don't know how you can try to figure out who's going to come to play in this one. I mean, you broke it down as good as you could. For Oakland, it was a love fest until the final minute of the game. I mean, it was going to be, a nice ending to the Coliseum and send them out with a win, and then to lose to Jacksonville in the fashion that they did. And I got to put a lot of this right on John Gruden. I mean, I think they should have been a little more aggressive in trying to, get another first down there. That Jacksonville would have never got the ball back. And they did, and give them credit to march down the field and get the win. For the Chargers, it's sad to see one of the better quarterbacks in the league, Phillip Rivers, have an ending to his career. I mean, I don't know if this is the end, but it sure does look like it with the way he has deteriorated in the second half of the season. 7 turnovers yesterday for the team, as you said. If the Chargers are going to show up to play a game the rest of the way, you would think it would be next week with Kansas City in the spoiler role, maybe, to hurt them in home field somewhere along the line or something. But I just don't see how either team gets motivated here. And generally, when that's the case, I'm going to look to the over, Rob, because it takes more effort and intensity to play defense than it does to play offense. And I just don't see either one of these teams showing up with a big defensive effort here. This is one of those meaningless games, be like the old pickup games in the backyard. It's just going to be all offense. And I would look to the over in this game is my initial thought. As far as which way this line's going to move, the look-ahead line was 5. I see it being bouncing around between 5.5 and 6. You might get some love again for the Chargers because on paper they're the better team, but they have just underachieved all year. And I don't know where all that money came from yesterday on the Chargers. Beating Jacksonville 45-10. Again, that doesn't make me want to run to the window and be happy about that. But Rob, how many people are going to look at this game this way? And this usually doesn't work out well. They're going to look and see that Jacksonville just beat Oakland and the Chargers beat Jacksonville. So if Team A can beat Team B, then they should be able to slaughter Team C. And that means we'll probably have a 31-30 game here, over and the dog getting the money.
Very true, and I like the take on the over there, Marco. I think I'll follow you on that because that does appear to be the way that this game should play out. Another meaningless NFC contest here, Jacksonville at Atlanta. Atlanta opens 7-46. Game sits at Atlanta -7. Slight downward tick in the total to 45.5. Atlanta certainly played hard yesterday. Jacksonville certainly played hard yesterday in that late rally. Anything you see between these two teams in this game, Marco?
It would be the same thing. I would be looking only one way in this game, and that is to the over with Atlanta. You got that offense going the last 2 weeks. They put up, again, the 29 yesterday, misleading because of what happened at the end of the game. They put up 40 against Carolina the week before. Atlanta's played better the second half of the season, but this was still a disappointment. And for them to get the win they got yesterday, Rob, I just don't see them coming with full intensity here this week because of it. That was a very satisfying win for them. And although it is the last home game, you want to put on, maybe a good show and some guys playing for jobs and such. Jacksonville, until that final drive yesterday, this looked like a team that had quit on the season. I don't know how excited we can get with them being on the road for a second week in a row, especially taking that West Coast road trip. Nothing for me on the side in this game, but this is another one of those when it's late in the season and it's a meaningless game for both teams. For me, it's over or pass because I just don't see any intensity on the defensive side. We have seen Gardner Minshew for Jacksonville move the team at times this year. In the Atlanta defense is not good. This is a spot where I could see some points again. I would look to the over or pass. I've got nothing on the side.
Again, I'll probably be right there with you on that play, Marco. Matt Ryan should have a huge day with that offense. And as you mentioned, Gardner Minshew just brings that extra spark to that Jacksonville team. And that comeback yesterday may rally them in their final 2 games of the season to at least be competitive, which they weren't the 2 previous weeks till yesterday. The New Orleans Saints will go to Tennessee to play the Titans in what is a meaningful, impactful game. Hard to gauge the exact number here, Marco, with New Orleans playing tonight. I know that they've opened -151 the total. That number stays the same. I think the result tonight could move that number a little bit. But let's go over real quick what's pending here for the New Orleans Saints as they sit currently as the number 3 seed in the NFC. Their last 2 games, obviously this Tennessee game, and then they'll play Carolina, which for all intent and purposes has checked out on the season. If they win out and they finish in the NFC at 13-3 in a tie with Seattle, they would be the number 1 seed due to a 33-27 win over the Seahawks earlier this season, week 3. If they end up in a 13-3 tie with the 49ers, they would lose that tiebreaker because the 49ers beat them a couple weeks ago, 48-46. If they finish in a tie with Green Bay at 13-3, which is also possible, Green Bay would win that tiebreaker due to conference record since the 2 don't have any head-to-head action. 3-way ties at 13-3, Marco, too deep for me to get to right now. I didn't see a full scenario on those, but this goes to show you how tight it is in the NFC. We talked about Tennessee a little bit. They are in the midst of trying to fight their way back into the playoff scenario. The loss to Houston hurt them a little bit, but there are ways for them to get back in. Important game, to say the least. I think the only question is, will this number stay at New Orleans -1 with a total of 51? And I think tonight's result will have a lot to do with whether it does or doesn't.
Yeah, it does. And I'll just touch on this briefly because I forgot to tell you the format. We generally skip the two games involving the teams that are playing tonight because there are so many question marks that we don't have the answer to with who won tonight. But for as far as Tennessee goes, they are still very much alive for the playoffs, but they don't control their own destiny. They have to win and they need help. Now, as far as the division goes, they have to win to make next week's game relevant. You know, if they lose here, they're in trouble for next week. But this is a spot where they, because of Pittsburgh losing yesterday, has now opened up the door that they've got a chance because Pittsburgh has 2 tough games and they're both on the road. They got to go to the Jets and they got to go to Baltimore. And that, opens the door for them to sneak in for that final wild card spot. But again, they don't control their own destiny. Pittsburgh can shut them out with wins. I look at this one, and for Tennessee, they run the football, and that's what's been their key during this surge. Everybody talks about, Ryan Tannehill, how he's changed the team. He's changed the team because they have a legitimate threat at quarterback where you've got to respect the passing game. Mariota wasn't putting any fear in the eyes of any defenses this season. And what's happened is it's helped both the running game and the passing game because the running game now, they're not stacking the box trying, to dare you to throw the football. They got to respect the pass. And with the normal defenses, that running game has opened up. You look at their last 5 games, going back 5 back, 225, 219, 154, 161, 163. That's old school football, Rob. You win running the football in the NFL. I know everybody loves the passing and loves, all the gaudy stats and that. But since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and that's a long time, buddy, you can control the line of scrimmage. You're going to win football games, and that's what's been the turn for Tennessee. In that game yesterday, pivotal play against Houston. It was a 0-0 game, and Tennessee was inside the 5, ready to score and take a 7-0 lead that could have changed the complexion of that game. And on a fluke fumble/interception where the guy got it, turned, and the ball went straight up in the air and right into a lineman's hands, and he went off to the races and just ran out of gas inside the 15-yard line the other way, got tackled, but Tennessee ended up giving up the touchdown then and went behind 7-0 instead of up 7-0. Big swing in that game for sure. So we'll see how they bounce back this week at home. The Saints defense, last week against San Francisco, man, they couldn't stop the 49ers at all. Tonight, we'll see what they do against Indianapolis. But the key is you got to throw the football against the Saints. That's where they're vulnerable. And Tennessee's going to have to go out of their norm to get the job done. But I think they can get some big plays off of that play action that they've got with that good running game. And if they catch a couple big scores, they might be able to pull the upset here. I got to lean to Tennessee. I'm a little suspect on that New Orleans defense.
Yeah, and a couple of big injuries across that New Orleans defensive front as well, Marco, could help the running game of Derrick Henry. We'll see, as you mentioned, how they fare this evening. But a meaningful game for both. Tennessee, by the way, will know their divisional fate off of the Houston-Tampa Bay result the day before, so it may be only a wild card fate that they're playing for. Pittsburgh, of course, with the Jets. We'll get to that in a couple of seconds here. Tennessee needs to win, as do the Saints. Giants and Redskins, Marco, NFC East. Not much meaning here. Eli Manning got his send-off yesterday. The Washington Redskins fought Philadelphia tooth and nail, wind up falling short, and certainly for those of us who held Redskins +6 or +6.5, we were left at the altar by the final play of that game. In this instance, Washington opened up a 2-point favorite, 41.5 the total. Sits exactly where it opened right now, almost universally. So, Marco, a couple of teams with nowhere to go, but Dwayne Haskins did play well yesterday, and Washington did show some fight. The Giants blew out Miami. Was that the one game that they're going to play to end the season, and the heck with the rest? Not real sure, so I'll turn it over to you. Let us know about Giants-Redskins on Sunday.
Well, you want to talk about, I know this is a division game, but it is a meaningless division game because it doesn't mean anything for either team. If you're looking at the Giants, this is a spot where it's almost a sandwich game because, as you said, it was a big home game for Eli. Got to, pull out the win, get a win there. Now they go on the road to Washington. If the Giants have anything left to be excited about, it might be that final game of the season, which if it is still Eli, making the start, if they finish the season with him, and I'm looking to see if there's any, if they've made any announcements on this week for sure, or if they still have it as, they got Eli listed as the starter for this week. If he finishes the season out, that would be his, possibly his final game as a New York Giant and being at home the following week. So playing this meaningless game against Washington when they'll be playing that final game against Philly, which, depending on what happens Sunday with Dallas and Philly, could be playing to knock Philadelphia out of the playoffs. And what a story that would be for Eli in his last game. So I'm going to classify this as a sandwich game, and I'm going to look to the Washington Redskins in this one. And given the way the line is sitting right now, with Washington, a 2.5-point favorite. I could see this maybe ticking to 3. So if you want Washington, I think you get it before it gets to the field goal. And Washington, since they fired the coach, they have been playing hard for Callahan. So at least you got a team that's trying. And that's something that I like to see late in the year with a team that's been out of the playoffs for quite some time. At least they got some fire. And I look for that today. So go ahead and hit that one. I like the Washington side.
Yeah, and that, as you mentioned, Marco, the intensity, the fire that they're playing with, you could see it on the field yesterday. And partly the reason why I had Washington yesterday, I just thought that, they're showing some life at the end of the year. Bill Callahan trying to get that job. We'll see what goes on with Giants at Redskins this Sunday. The Pittsburgh Steelers and New York Jets next up on the docket. Pittsburgh, of course, we've already talked about it. They need to win out. If they win out, they're automatically in the playoffs. The problem for them won't be the New York Jets, I don't presume, but it would be that final game against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if the Ravens have everything under control, the number 1 seed, and decide to rest players in that game. But one step at a time here for Mike Tomlin's bunch, who will be, or at least opened up as a 3-point favorite on the road against the New York Jets, 38.5 the total. 3 has stayed steady. Let's see a little bit of movement here, Marco, in the total, 38.5 down to 38. It seems kind of easy. Pittsburgh must game. Jets not really putting up much resistance. The run defense is their best asset, but didn't show up in their last game. So how do we see Pittsburgh at the Jets?
Well, this is a very tough spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got to pick themselves up off the mat from yesterday's performance. And, for Duck Hodges, the third-string quarterback for Pittsburgh, a nightmare of a game for him with the interceptions yesterday. He had been playing good football, limiting the mistakes, and the old cliche, he was driving the bus without, getting any dings on the bus there, not making any mistakes, and letting the defense carry the team and just doing enough to get the wins. That wasn't the case yesterday. So you got to worry about his confidence moving into this one. The other thing that you got to look at is the Jets have played better the second half of the season. Now, they got steamrolled against Baltimore, and as you alluded to, the one strength that the Jets have is that rush defense, and they got gashed for 218 yards against Baltimore. My question to you, Rob, is who has stopped the Baltimore rush attack this year? Okay, this is a rushing attack like none other. Pittsburgh's rushing attack is, it's good, but it's not a gimmick rushing attack with like Lamar Jackson. So I think the Jets are going to have a lot of success in limiting the running game of the Steelers. It's going to be a question if the Steelers defense can carry them in this one. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. I said it against when they played Arizona. I said it when they played Buffalo yesterday. And I'm going to say it again here. As long as Pittsburgh is a favorite, I'm going to tease the dog up because this team is just not built to get separation. Rob, the offense just doesn't score enough points. The only way they win a game where they get separation is if they have 2 pick sixes or, a kick return, something other than an offensive score. This is a team that the offense is just too pedestrian right now, but it is one of the best defenses in the league. And as I said, opening it up, when you get 5 turnovers, you allow 5 turnovers and yet only give up 17 points in the game. That's pretty damn good defense. So I'm going to look to the Jets on teasers. Now it's sitting at 3, which sitting at 3 is a rough number for teasers because if I take a 6-point teaser, I tease them up to 9. Although, we're over the touchdown in that, you're not really the value. So if it's at 3, I probably would make it a 7-point teaser and get that extra insurance and get it to 2 scores and have 10. But if I wait and the line does drop to 2.5, I have no problem with the 6-point teaser because you're going to lay 20 cents less on the juice here in Vegas. So you would get them to 8.5, which gets you over the key numbers of 3, 4, 6, and 7. I just don't see the Steelers winning by 10 or more in this game. So look to the Jets as the dog, but definitely on the Jets in teasers.
Strong teaser advice there from Marco on the Pittsburgh Jets game. Real quick here before we get to a couple of games that we can probably fly through because they are pretty, well, one's meaningless, one has a Monday night team involved. But real quick, I just want to reiterate one more time. It's $9 Monday at WagerTalk and at Sports Memo. You can get $9 plays from every handicapper at both sites. Lots of plays up there, including Monday Night Football. There's college basketball action. There's NBA action. I myself will have an NBA play to go with my NFL play as soon as the show ends. 31-20 to start the season. 60.8, almost 61%. So it's been a good start to the NBA season for myself. Marco has a Monday Night Football play off of a 6-0 Sunday, guys. So you might want to get to WagerTalk, see what Marco has in store for tonight. But once again, it's $9 Monday. Take advantage. All plays marked down to $9 at sportsmemo.com and at wagertalk.com. Marco, Cincinnati and Miami, my goodness, 2 teams that probably have more interest in their draft position than they do in winning this game. Miami certainly came out in the second half as if the halftime speech was, hey, guys, we're too close. Let's let the Giants open this game up a little bit because they were non-existent in the second half. The Bengals, of course, second half, same deal. close with New England, 10-10, I think, with a minute left till the half. And then all of a sudden, a field goal and the floodgates opened up due to a pair of interceptions by the Patriots, not necessarily their offense. But here we have Miami at home, a 2.5-point opening favorite, 45.5 the total. Number has been pushed down. Heavy Cincinnati money early here, Marco, and generally speaking, on Sunday night when these things open, or Sunday afternoon, it's not public money pushing these numbers. So 2.5 down to 1. I guess we would reference that as a sharp move. Miami now sits -1. Totals bumped up to 46.5. How you see this game going between these two also rans?
This is a game that, honestly, Rob, I don't really want to be involved in, because to try to figure out motivation, since they brought Andy Dalton back, at least, Cincinnati has played like they've tried until yesterday against New England. I mean, they were leading in the first half. I mean, it was a game for a half. And then after that, the floodgates opened. But this is a spot where, they're not playing for the number 1 draft pick, because Miami's got 3 wins and Cincinnati only has 1. So even if Cincinnati wins, they're not going to hurt themselves in that regard. Do you look at it and say, hey, this is one of those ones with 2 teams that don't mean anything? Look to the over. We know that Miami, at least with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, the offense has some life. They have put up some numbers since, he's been back in there. They scored 20 at Buffalo, 24 against Cleveland, 37, 21, and 20 the last 2 weeks. So you're looking at a low total of 46 on today's standards. I would lean again to the over here or nothing, and this is a game that I probably will not be involved in. Much better games on the card next week.
Yeah, absolutely, Marco. A game that's impossible to get inside the heads of both of those teams, and over may as well be the play there if you're going to play at all. I would totally agree. This next game involves one of the Monday night participants tonight. Carolina will go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. We will tell you that the opener here was Indianapolis 6.5, total 46.5. It has stayed the same. We probably won't hit on this too much, but I will tell you real quick, tiebreakers situation, playoff scenario for the Indianapolis Colts. They sit as a number 7 seed right now. They're not totally eliminated as of yet. They have to win out. A win right here due to Tennessee's loss yesterday would put them only 1 game behind the Titans, and certainly in that wild card mix. They need to win out. They need Houston to lose out. They're pretty much a draw as far as head-to-head goes, with Houston and Tennessee 1-1 against both this season. Last 2 games of the year, they're fairly winnable, Carolina and Jacksonville. So we'll see what they do tonight. But Indianapolis is still mathematically alive. Marco, I'll let you have the floor here just for a couple of seconds if you have anything to add on what might happen here against Carolina Sunday.
Yeah, we can't even begin to handicap this game without tonight's knowledge, because if they don't win tonight, it's done for them. So we just got to wait and see what happens there. And if they do lose tonight, this is a team that, could pack it in. That would be 4 losses in a row, playoff, gone. It was supposed to be a lost season. Andrew Luck being hurt, then retired. So nothing to say here. We'll wait and see what happens tonight and then evaluate it from there.
Skipping on to the next game, an AFC North battle, Baltimore at Cleveland. Boy, Marco, I remember back toward the beginning of the season when this Lamar Jackson Baker Mayfield matchup was dueled got claimed to be some sort of showdown. Baltimore made it more of a smackdown. Cleveland was put in their place for the remainder of the year, and Baltimore took their place for the remainder of the year. They opened up 7 in this game on the road at Cleveland, and they're all the way up to 10. Obviously, there's still a lot at stake for the Ravens. They can lock down that number 1 seed. The Cleveland Browns, they go to Arizona yesterday, and Arizona just absolutely goes nuts on them. Cleveland outgained Arizona in that game, but Cleveland really wasn't ever in a position to cover that game as -3 on the road. Baltimore here now -10 with a total of 49, the highest scoring offense in the NFL, one of the better defenses in the NFL. How do you see this game going?
Well, the first game was a big over. And if you remember, Cleveland, one of their claims to fame this year is they went into Baltimore and beat Baltimore 40-25. Worst game of the season for Baltimore. But, a little different note now. And Baltimore playing with revenge obviously has something to play for because they're trying to lock down, home field advantage and, with New England right there and everything. So you're going to get Baltimore to come to play. And as far as Cleveland goes, yesterday with that Arizona game, that was one of my plays yesterday. I was on the over in that game because this Cleveland defense, not the same since Myles Garrett with the suspension. That hurt this team so badly defensively. And now they're going to be facing a Baltimore team with revenge. That's why, the number went from the look-ahead line where Baltimore was 7 prior to this week's games being played, and then given the Thursday night beatdown of the Jets by Baltimore, 3 extra days to prepare. And then you got Cleveland, you're traveling across country to play Arizona, now back to Cleveland. Everything's pointing to Baltimore. 10's a big number for a home dog in a rivalry, but right now I don't want any part of the Cleveland Browns. Their coach gets out-coached game in and game out. Mismatch as far as the sidelines go, mismatch as far as the offenses go, and the defense, Baltimore's defense isn't great, but it's better than Cleveland's. This is one of those games where you could see a lot of points again, but Baltimore with that running game could just keep Cleveland on the sidelines for long periods of time. This is a game I lean to Baltimore, but I'm not getting involved.
Yeah, and check the weather report for Cleveland, Ohio. Obviously, it goes without saying any of these Midwest, East Coast, Mid-Atlantic cities this time of year, you want to be sure over the weekend of weather. Weather would probably help the Ravens anyway. They're the better running team. They've answered the bell at every turn so far this year. A team that averages over 30 can make 10 look small. So, like Marco said, standing in front of this freight train right now, not advised by many, at least not by Marco and myself. Here we go. Dallas at Philadelphia. And I'll tell you, Marco, tucked in here in the southeastern corner of Pennsylvania. They were lining up on the Ben Franklin Bridge ready to jump a couple of weeks ago. There's still a bunch there, I think, because they're not thrilled. And I can't say I would be thrilled as an Eagles fan either with narrow escapes against the Giants and the Redskins, tooth and nail to win those 2 games. They're going to welcome in the Dallas Cowboys. This one's for all the marbles as far as NFC East is concerned. Dallas opened -1, 47.5 off of their performance yesterday. They took some action, -2.5 now. Total remains at 47.5. One more time, weather in Philly, always a concern. But just from a fundamental standpoint, from a situational standpoint, where do you see this line going? And who do you favor in this contest?
Well, we see which way the line's going to go because the look-ahead line was a pick'em. And based off of yesterday's scores, both teams win. Both win by double digits, but Philadelphia gets the scoop and score at the end of the game to make it a 10-point game. So people are going to look and say, hey, this is back-to-back weeks that they were tooth and nail, life and death with the Giants on Monday Night Football in a must-win game, had to go to overtime. They came from behind to tie it and then win it in overtime and then look like they were going to escape with just a 3-point win over Washington yesterday, and then they get the touchdown at the end of the game, or actually would have been a 4-point game because they didn't kick the extra point. But this is a spot where all they had to do was get to this game. And the fact that the public has jumped on this game, they brought this out, opened it up. It's now at 2.5. That's 2.5 points, I think, of overreaction. Yes, Dallas looked impressive yesterday. But, Rob, I'm going to quote one of my favorite sayings that I say over and over again, and I've said it for 40 years. No team is as good as their best performance, nor is a team ever as bad as their worst performance. We saw Dallas yesterday with their best game maybe of the entire season, and the public's overreacting to it. When they played the first time, in Dallas. Dallas was a 3-point favorite, and now they're a 2.5-point favorite on the road. That is just, to me, way too much of an adjustment. Granted, Philly's had, and I don't have to tell you about it, you being there in the Eagle territory, they've had a laundry list of injuries this year. No question about that. And their secondary is bad. But do you really want to count on Dak Prescott having 2 good games in a row throwing the football? I think the value's on Philadelphia. Home dog in a must-win situation for all the marbles. I'm going to be involved in Philly in some aspect, whether it's going to be straight play or getting the extra 6 points and get it over the touchdown with a teaser. Philly will be on my card somewhere on the weekend.
Yeah, and boy, the move from Dallas 1 to Dallas 2.5 certainly has helped a 6-point teaser. Marco crosses over the 7, crosses over that 8, which can be key too. That's moving in the direction of Philly being much better of a play in a teaser right now. Arizona at Seattle. NFC West. Arizona came to play yesterday. Going to go to Seattle. Seattle has everything to gain now. They somehow, some way land as the number 1 seed as we sit here on Monday afternoon. So it's all in front of them right now, Marco. Win 2 games, win this one, beat San Francisco at home next week, and go to the playoffs as the number 1 seed in the NFC. Russell Wilson and company opened -10, 48.5. Been bet down a little bit, 9.5, and the total has moved up to 51. I guess a little bit of action on the over due to the fact that Seattle has not been great defensively, the fact that Arizona gives it up defensively. Kyler Murray and company have not quit. Priced where it is, total where it is. How do you see this one going?
Well, I think this total's a little bit too high, and it's an overreaction to yesterday's results. You had Arizona in that 38-24 game. As I said, I was on the over. One of the reasons for that is that's the angle of having 2 teams that have nothing to play for out of the playoffs, 2 bad defenses, and 2 capable offenses. And that's what we end up with. We get 72 points in the game. Seattle, 30-24. They were in a 54-point game. So we're seeing a total, this one come out at 50.5 right now. I'm looking at, that's one of the highest totals with Seattle on the season. Seattle in this game, they got to win to hold down where they're sitting at. They also got a monster game next week, Rob. This is one of those ones where after back-to-back road games, playing the Rams and then playing cross-country Carolina, they want to get in and get out against Arizona and get to that game next week with San Francisco. The Arizona Cardinals, the last 3 weeks have been gashed on the ground. 132 yards they gave up, 140 and 152 yesterday to the Rams, the Steelers, and Cleveland. That's a big concern. We know Seattle can run the football with their running game and, of course, with Russell Wilson tucking it and running. I don't see Russell taking too many chances, risk getting hurt in this game with the big game on deck and the playoffs just around the corner. But if there's ever a quarterback, he is an absolute magician. For as much as he runs the football, Rob, he gets the hit the least of any quarterback in the NFL. He is uncanny of getting out of bounds or sliding before he takes a hit. I think you're going to see a good defensive effort out of Seattle in this one, and a lot of running to get in and get out, shorten the game. I like the under. This number is just too high based on an overreaction to the weekend.
Yeah, Chris Carson, the running back for Seattle, a workhorse in general on any given Sunday, never mind a Sunday like this where they may want to just get the victory and get out. Also note Jadeveon Clowney, not part of the defensive unit yesterday, should be back for this game to help the Seattle defensive effort out. KC, in the snow yesterday, takes care of the Denver Broncos. They're going to go to Chicago where, who knows, maybe they'll see snow again. But the Bears played themselves right out of the playoffs yesterday. That 21-13 loss to Green Bay pretty much eliminates them. It's a Sunday night game, Marco. It's a marquee matchup. You're at home. I don't think that they're going to lay down by any means, but there's certainly not a lot for the Bears to play for here. KC has a ton to play for. That victory over New England a couple of weeks ago. It holds a key to them getting to that number 2 seed should they tie with the Patriots. So a lot for Kansas City here. Patrick Mahomes and company opened -4, 45 the total. Quickly bet up to -5 with the total remaining at 45. Give us your thoughts on KC at Chicago.
Yeah, I could easily see this getting to 6, Rob. The Kansas City is going to be the side. Now, here's the thing. We mentioned it in one of the other games. Because New England plays on Saturday, Kansas City's already going to know where they're at as far as what they need to do. If New England loses on Saturday, man, all the motivation in the world drops right into the lap of Kansas City here. Chicago, as you said, we're handicapping what's their demeanor. This is a team that went to the playoffs last year, got bounced from the playoffs in, very stunning fashion with the double doink field goal miss at the end of the game to the Eagles. And there were a lot of expectations coming into this season. Mitchell Trubisky has not progressed as a quarterback, and if anything, he's regressed. I will say that he's thrown some yardage the last few weeks, but unfortunately, he's also had some bad interceptions, especially yesterday. They had 3 turnovers in a game yesterday, which was the dagger for them in that game. Again, you're -3 turnovers. They only lost by 8, so that defense kept them in the game. If they come and play for pride, this is a team that's getting a healthy number here that could disrupt this Kansas City offense some with their defense. But the problem is if they fall behind by 2 scores and Mitchell Trubisky's got to force the issue, it could really get ugly because I just don't trust him at all. I am going to wait and see what happens on Saturday and see where the need factor is. But I would have to say if I'm playing the game, it would be Chicago or I'm going to pass the game. But Mitchell Trubisky, man, oh man, it's just hard. It's just hard to swallow. I never was high on him to begin with, Rob. I don't know how they drafted him as high as he did with just 13 college game, experience under his belt, especially in a conference that doesn't play any defense. He just has not taken that next step. You look at a guy like Lamar Jackson that, my God, went from, just a running quarterback to now a running god and a pinpoint passer. His passing game is really elevated, and it's made him that much better of a runner because now they got to respect the pass. It's Chicago or pass, but I just don't know if I have things in the southern region big enough to bet Trubisky again against Mahomes. I mean, you're talking about about as big of a quarterback mismatch as you could have. Patrick Mahomes versus Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, I think as long as the two of us have been in this profession, Marco, we know that the southern region has to grow at times, and you just have to hold your nose and hope that things turn out the right way. Sometimes they do. Monday Nighter next week will feature the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. NFC North supremacy at stake. If Minnesota wants a chance to win that division, this is their chance. They have been, Marco, the home team deluxe all season long, and not necessarily that on the road, but yesterday on the road. Once again, we have a hard time calling the Chargers the road, but they did perform well. 39-10 defense came to play. Offense didn't particularly do much, and Dalvin Cook got hurt in that game, so be sure to check his status before you play this contest, which takes place on Monday night. They opened, the Minnesota Vikings did, as a 4.5-point favorite, 46.5 the total. We see those same exact numbers for the most part standing right now. It's a big game, Marco. Green Bay, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, there's a path for them to finish first in the NFC right now. There's also a path for them to finish as low as 5th. So how do you see Green Bay with better than 4.5 faring against Minnesota, which has been a good home team all year long?
This will be the first time in a month, Rob, that the line on Green Bay from the look-ahead line to now really hasn't gone against them. The public is the early sharp money for 4 weeks in a row jumped in on whoever Green Bay was playing because people don't believe in this Green Bay team. They feel they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. And yesterday, once again, even though they won the game and it was a game that they were in control of, at least as far as the scoreboard goes. It got close late when Chicago actually ended up at the 2-yard line with a chance to tie with a 2-point conversion if they would have punched it in. But this is a spot. They scored 21 points this week. They scored 20 against Washington the week before. They only had 292 yards of offense. Now, granted, the Bears' defense is good. Minnesota's defense is good as well. Not as good as the Bears. In Minnesota lately has been susceptible to the pass. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them yesterday, they were facing Phillip Rivers that doesn't have a cannon for an arm anymore. They still gave up just under 300 yards, but 7 turnovers was the key. Dalvin Cook is mammoth in this game. They need a healthy Dalvin Cook to be able to run the football against Green Bay. Green Bay, you can run the football against them. And obviously we know when you run the football, it makes your quarterback better. And that's what's helped Kirk Cousins. I don't trust the Vikings when they got to rely solely on Kirk Cousins. But this is a big game. It's a Monday night. You've got, the crowd factor there in Minnesota. I got to lean to Minnesota here. I would have much rather loved a field goal, but, that was never going to be the case. This is going to be at the 4, could creep to 4.5 when we get some action. Difference between 4 and 4.5. Yeah, there's a difference there. If it gets to 4.5 and then you don't know where to go, what you want to do if you're waiting on Minnesota, it's not going to hurt you to wait, because if it goes to 5, there's no difference between a 4.5 and a 5. It's a dead number. But if it does come back to 4, you're back to a better number. So right now I've got to lean to Minnesota. I just don't believe in this Green Bay team, but again, it's tough to give points to Aaron Rodgers. And I know there'll be a lot of people on Monday night that'll have teasers hooked up to Green Bay because you can get them to double digits, and people aren't going to expect them to lose by double digits. But if you look at their road games this year, they have not been impressive. Remember, they got drilled at San Francisco. They got drilled at the Chargers, and then they were life and death against Kansas City without Patrick Mahomes on the road. So my concerns for Aaron Rodgers on the road in Minnesota. And if you remember the first meeting, Rob, between these two, Green Bay won it, but they jumped out to a 21-0 lead and never scored again. Held on for a 21-16 victory. This is a spot where I think Minnesota can get their revenge, and I got to give a huge coaching edge right now. We'll see Matt LaFleur as time goes on. We'll see what happens. But right now, I got to give a huge coaching edge to Minnesota and Zimmer.
Yeah, great point there, Marco. I think it was 21 points in the first 17 minutes of that game, and then 0 points over the course of the last 43 minutes. Minnesota had chances to win that game. This stadium will be crazy on Monday night. Lots of skull chants going on in Minnesota Monday against the Green Bay Packers. Want to tell everybody quickly here once again, $9 Monday at WagerTalk.com, $9 Monday at SportsMemo.com. All plays released by all handicappers marked down to just $9. Go ahead and take advantage. This special is run every single Monday by the company. You can get $9 plays in every sport. College basketball, college football, bowl games are on the horizon, of course. The NFL, NHL, whatever your fancy is, there's a $9 play out there for you. So once again, visit sportsmemo.com, visit wagertalk.com. Visit Marco, 6-0 yesterday, on a very good roll here in the NFL. You want to hit him up on Twitter, you can see it right there on the screen, at Marco in Vegas. Myself, go to at Rob Vino Sports. We will answer any questions or anything you guys want to talk about. Marco, I want to thank you for joining me here, first time out in place of the Prez. Hopefully I did not insult you. Prez loves to insult everybody on there, but I try my best to be a polite host here. Hopefully I've accomplished that fact. Hopefully we've given all you guys listening here a bunch of info for this week's games. But Marco, once again, thanks for being with me here on this good show here, Betting Edge show for the Prez.
I appreciate you did a fine job filling in for the Prez, no problem. And yes, he does like to have fun insulting me, but it's all in jest. I love the Prez. We have a good time, and you're a formidable replacement for the Prez. So good luck to you tonight and all week, Rob, and good luck to everybody watching the podcast.
No doubt about it. We all love the Prez here at Sports Memo Wager Talk. Good luck to everybody. Let's cash some tickets, and we will get with you again tomorrow, same time with the Betting Edge show. Once again, Rob Vino and Marco D'Angelo wishing you all best of luck.